Hey all, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this video we're going to be covering my top 10 creative and powerful builds. These are versatile builds that do a good amount of damage but are also really fun to use too. This is one of my favorite videos I've done in a long time. First up here is the Black Flame Dragon build. This is a variant of the build that I did on Friday where I did the Blood Pyro Knight. By the way, that build does appear at the end of the video. We're going to take on Malenia on New Game Plus 7. It's a really fun and epic battle. Looking forward to that. As far as this build itself though, it concentrates on Black Flame and Dragon incantations. And for this one, we are going to be using the Godslayer seal in our offhand for the passive boost, because it's going to boost Black Flame by 15%. And then in our main hand, we have the Dragon Communion seal because we're a Faith and Arcane build. Technically, like the build I did on Friday, you could add in something like Bleed because you can throw a weapon on a cult like the Scavenger Curse Sword or Nagakiba, but for this I went for Black Flame in combo with Dragon Ice to get some frost procs and some fire damage. By the way, we're on New Game Plus 7, Journey 31. I'll show the journey at the end. All builds are at rune level 150, and one thing to mention about this video is there's going to be some tough bosses in here. We fight Commander Niall, we fight Malenia, we fight Placidusax or Placidusa, however you say his name. Some tough bosses. Let's jump into equipment. And we have the Dragon Communion seal, we have the Short Spear and Flame Art with Black Flame Tornado, Godslayer seal for the offhand. You can check out the armor set, Roar Medallion, Godfrey Icon, Flux Canvas Talisman, Fire Scorpion Charm, Fire Tier, Magic Tier. Let's jump into stats. So for stats, we're a Faith and Arcane build. When we're using the Faith tier, we have both soft caps of 45 and 45. We have 60 Vigor, 26 Mind, and Endurance. We're using Golden Vow, Hellish Shabriri, Dragon Ice, and Black Flame to create a powerful Fire and Ice build. And the next fun and cool build we have is Lionel the Wizard. Now, we haven't done the Sword of Night and Flame in forever, so I figured I'd make a build for it. A lot of people are asking me to do another build for the Sword of Night and Flame, so I did one finally again with 60 Vigor this time and 51 Poise. Now, this is a Faith and Intelligence build, and honestly, this is one of the most fun builds you can do because you can mix a whole bunch of different things with this. You can go and add in different Faith incantations, you can add in spells, all that kind of stuff. For me, I wanted to concentrate mainly on the Sword of Night and Flame because I know people wanted to build for it and maximizing the damage on the beam. And that's the best part of the Sword of Night and Flame. The fire part is good, don't get me wrong. It's actually better for mob control because it has such a wide sweep. It is harder to pull off on bosses because it's a little bit slow. The beam, though, you can hang back and get a lot of magic damage out of it. By the way, real quick, comment your current thoughts on DLC. How hyped are you? How excited are you? I honestly cannot wait for DLC. It's gonna be amazing. It looks so incredible in the trailer. Comment below your thoughts on the trailer and DLC. By the way, as far as this boss goes, if you're using something ranged, you can end up getting the jump attack and this exact frost attack over and over again. That one will miss fairly often, and then as far as the jump attack, it has a fairly generous dodge window, back off, and then hit him again with the beam. Yeah, he becomes significantly less tough. Does it make the fight go on a little bit longer? Yeah, the fight will go on a little bit longer with this strategy, but overall this ends up being a safer way to take him down. Keep your distance and pay attention for those generous dodge windows, back off, and attack again. Yeah, I know this boss is frustrating for many. I know a lot of people have had difficulty with him. By the way, always make sure you take care of the knight on the right first because he's going to be the more aggressive knight. The shield one's fairly easy to take out afterwards. Make sure you take down the tough knight first. And then you can get right to the fight. He'll pretty much do his phase transition once they're gone, and he's going to have a lot of HP at that point if you take him down fast, but it doesn't matter because, as you can see, he gets kind of trapped in these same attacks that he repeats over and over again, and down goes Commander Niall. Alright, in a second here, we're going to go over stats, equipment, everything you need to know for this awesome build for the Sword of Night and Flame. Let's get into this. Alright, we have the Sword of Night and Flame plus 10. You can use any staff for Terra Magica, any seal for buffs. We have part of Lionel's set and the Spellblade set, which will boost the beam. Shard of Alexander, Magic Scorpion Charm, Ritual Sword, and Shield Talisman. And then we have the Magic tier, Faith tier for buffs. Let's jump into stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 23 Mind, 29 Endurance. We have 50 Intelligence, 35 Faith with the Faith tier. Base Faith is 25. We're using Golden Vow and Hellish Shabriri and Terra Magica for our buffs. If you never use a Sword of Night and Flame, they did buff it again since they nerfed it. There was a nerf and then a buff for it. It's a really fun weapon to use. And the next one we have up here is my Spartan 2.0 build. So I finally did a Spartan, and I ended up going for a Great Shield rather than the smaller shield, which I know typically fits the Spartan more, and we brought back Flame of the Redmanes, which really still isn't that great, but I wanted to add a ranged option for this build, so we are using the Ash of War Flame of the Redmanes. For those that are catching up on Elden Ring after they heard the news of the DLC trailer, and everybody's hyped up for that, it seems, Flame of the Redmanes was one of those things that was nerfed. It used to do 40 poise damage per attack, now it's down to 10, which means basically it's just added fire damage from a mid-range. And we did take on a fairly easy boss. We can defend ourselves with the Great Shield, the Golden Great Shield, and then we have the Short Spear. If you want to add some poking damage, you could do that too. Let's jump into equipment here in a second and go over the build. We have the Short Spear and Fire Affinity with Flame of the Redmanes. We have the Golden Great Shield. We have the Champion Boots on, the Godskin and Bracelets. We have the Rotten Gravekeeper Cloak, Tree Sentinel Helm, Shard of Alexander, Ritual Sword, and Shield Talisman, Erdtree's favorite +2, Fire Tier, Faith Tier, any seal for buffs. Let's jump into stats. Yeah, I have to slow down when I make those clips, but there's always so many builds and so much to fit in and so little time. But anyways, as far as this build, we have 60 Vigor, 25 Mind, 30 Endurance, 66 Strength, which will get us to 99 if you two-hand, but we're not two-handing, 25 Faith, and then we have Golden Vow and Flame Grim Strength. That one was a lot to get to. The next one up here, we have a Frost Strength build in the Frozen Anchor build. Now, this build made an appearance on my other channel. Actually, two of the builds in this video made an appearance on my alternate channel where I kind of just do fun builds. I'll leave the link for that if you want to join too. I kind of test weapons and stuff. It's pretty fun. But this build itself really stood out to me, and that is the Frost version of the Frozen Anchor with Wild Strikes. So Wild Strikes hits hard normally, but when you're able to get a Frost proc and even more damage, and in Cold Affinity with the Rusted Anchor, you're going to get a B in Strength Scaling too, so when you two-hand this, you're going to get a lot of damage out of it, and the ability to build up Frost relatively quickly. It's also incredibly fun to use, and you're going to get a lot out of the counter damage too, because the Rusted Anchor is pierce damage, so you do get the counter damage bonus. You can even use something like the Spear Talisman if you want to add that too. By the way, another one I really like is Guts Greatsword in Cold Affinity with Braggart's Roar, and you'll get a status multiplier with Roars too, so you can build up Frost really quickly, and that'll give you a B2 in Cold Affinity on Guts Greatsword and a lot of damage. Don't mind the big dragon here. He has 38,000 HP on New Game +7, so he can be a little bit tough with the Rusted Anchor. I think it took me 3 tries in total, but overall he does take good pierce damage, and you can get the Frost procs on him. And he is going to get a chance to do his beams. Now, that could be a little bit difficult to deal with. Those beams are tough. They can one-shot you on New Game +7 at 60 Vigor, no issue. I think he can one-shot you on most journeys because they're incredibly powerful, but we're going to run towards him and try to get behind him. And shortly here, we're going to end up running behind him and trying to avoid these beams. First, he's going to do the fire, which becomes really difficult to avoid because it switches to the beams. We got lucky there. It went over our head. We're going to get behind him here, and we're going to take down the big dragon. It can be a tough fight for many, but keep in mind, he takes good pierce damage, so the Rusted Anchor is an option if you're a Strength build, and if you're a Faith build, Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike or the Envoy's Longhorn will destroy Placidusax or Placidusa, however you say it, takes him down very fast. Somebody can actually write out in the comment section the exact pronunciation of his name. That would be fantastic for me, because no matter how I look for it, I can't find it. For this, we have the Rusted Anchor and Cold Affinity, and we have any seal for buffs. You can check out the armor set there. Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, Ritual Swords Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Melissen's Prosthesis, Thorny Tier, Faith Tier. And for stats on this one, this is another strength-based build. We'll have 99 strength when we two-hand this. We have 60 vigor, 25 mind, 30 endurance. We're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength for our buffs. We have 20 dexterity because we're using Melissen's Prosthesis, only 15 base. 25 faith with the faith tier that will allow you to do all your buffs. And the next one up here is the Lightning Storm build. I had a request for a dual straight sword lightning affinity build, so I opted to use Stormblade on one and Lightning Slash on the other. At the end here, we're going to get in some melee hits as well, and we're also going to be using Stormblade for some good damage. This is another one on the list that I recommend trying out if you're looking for something different. I don't do a lot of builds normally with straight swords because they're a little underwhelming for the most part, although Square Off is phenomenal for poise damage. Overall, it was fun changing it up and using them. And having lightning damage, I don't do a lot of lightning builds either. There's actually another lightning build in this video. We do a Thunderbolt build too. By the way, I have two builds for the Iron Greatsword in this video, and on my alternate channel, I'm going to soon do a highlight for the Iron Greatsword. I ended up liking it a lot. It has a lot of good base damage in several different affinities. Although the Bolt of Grand Axe is a pretty popular weapon that I do use here and there, it does have a little bit of a drop off though by the time you get to New Game Plus 7, but the range on it is phenomenal. As far as this build itself, having Stormblade and then Lightning Slash on the offhand for the extra damage boost gives us a nice melee and range build. I ended up liking this one a lot. I'm not a huge fan of straight swords, like I said. I do use square off because the poise damage is so good, and that's one of the few things you could do to poise break on New Game Plus 7 because poise is increased. But this was a fun one too. In a second here, we're going to jump into equipment for this build. Plus, I like the way this looks with the Lightning Sword in the offhand. We have one with Lightning Slash and Lightning Affinity, and the main hand Stormblade and Lightning Affinity as well. You can check out the armor set, any seal for buff, Shard of Alexander, Lightning Scorpion Charm, Melissa's Prosthesis, Ritual Shield Talisman, Thorny Tear, Fate Tear. Jump into stats. And for stats, the no surprise here, we're a Dexterity build. We have 65 Dexterity, our base is 60, we're using Melissa's Prosthesis. We have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 30 Endurance, 33 Faith with the Fate Tier. And our buffs are Golden Vow, and I guess I chose Hellish Abriria on this one, but you can go with Flame Grant Me Strength too if you want to invest in less faith. And the next one up here is going to be an all-frost build that includes Bloodhound's Fang. For the offhand, we have an Omen Cleaver and Cold Affinity with Chilling Mist. You're going to activate that first. And then for the main hand, we have Bloodhound's Fang, and since you can use so many different greases with it, for this we're using Freezing Grease to combine it and essentially make an all-frost build, but you can use a ton of different greases with Bloodhound's Fang. Turns into a really fun build and a decent way to proc Frost. We do end up eventually, I believe, getting a Frost proc, and this boss is not one I fight too often, so I decided to include it in the video to mix it up a little bit and change it up. I do a lot of the same bosses, a lot of the tougher main game bosses and stuff, so I throw some side ones in there and ones I usually don't fight as much to kind of keep it interesting. And we did get the Frost proc, and we ended up winning this fight. On New Game Plus 7, this isn't a particular boss that's going to give you a lot of trouble, though. It doesn't have a ton of HP, although they do move around a lot. She moves around a lot. I believe all the Black Knife Assassins are women. Anyways, we're going to jump into equipment here, and we're going to check out all the equipment for this awesome dual Frost build that uses Bloodhound's Fang. For equipment, we have Bloodhound's Fang, and then we have the Omen Cleaver and Cold Affinity. We are using Malekith's set. By the way, that had Chilling Mist, any seal for buff, Shard of Alexander, Claw Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman, Urtru's Favorite +2, Green Burst Crystal Tier, Fate Tier. Let's talk about stats. For stats, we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 32 Endurance. We have 34 Strength. If you decide to two-hand, that'll get you to 51. We have 50 Dexterity, 25 Faith with the Fate Tier. We have 51 Poise with this set on, and for our buffs, we're going to be using Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, and you can apply any greases you want, but we're using Freezing Grease. The next one up here is the Thunderbolt Knight, and this is going to focus on Thunderbolt and the Iron Greatsword. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm going to do an Iron Greatsword highlight on my alternate channel, but for this one, we have it in Lightning Affinity, and we're able to get good damage out of Thunderbolt. And as far as Thunderbolt, it's one of the most spammable Ashes of War in Elden Ring. You can use it quickly. It doesn't have a high FP cost, so you're going to get a little over 1,000 damage per use of each Ash of War, up to 1,500. Overall, a solid choice if you want to use something quick and effective. With Loretta's 0 lightning resistance, she takes the full complement of damage too, so that's also a bonus, but it's easy to roll out of and it's very easy to use. It's really one of those Ashes of War that's not going to be overpowered at any point because it does relatively low damage, low to moderate damage, but you can use it so quickly and so fast that it becomes basically a spammable spell, and it's very easy to roll out of or dodge too. It's actually a ton of fun to use. I haven't used Thunderbolt in a long time. I haven't done a build for Thunderbolt probably in about a year's time. It's been a while since I really used this Ash of War much, and I do like how quickly you can use it, and the low FP cost is also a huge bonus. By the way, I'm really excited for DLC. I keep thinking about the DLC trailer. It truly was incredible. I know a couple of people were like, oh, it's not that great, and then everybody else was pretty much hyped by it. That's me. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a fantastic trailer. It looked like we got a ton of new bosses, enemies, and a decent amount of content coming to Elden Ring. Yeah, I know the price tag was a talking point for people, but this is FromSoftware. They're going to make some of the best DLC. They have made some of the best DLC pretty much of all time, and with Elden Ring being a 10 out of 10 game, in my opinion, it's probably going to be one of the best DLCs ever made. I know I went off topic a little bit, but I'm just getting excited about it. I've been thinking about the DLC trailer a lot. June is a far ways away. It's 4 months away, but time does go fast, and when that time comes around and we're going to be playing the expansion, there's going to be so much added to the game. 8 new weapon types, by the way. It's going to be awesome. Jump into equipment for this one. For equipment, we have the Iron Greatsword Lightning Affinity with Thunderbolt. We're using the Malformed Dragon set. We have any seal for buff, Shard of Alexander, Lightning Scorpion Charm, Ritual Sword Talisman, Erdtree's Favorite +2, Lightning Tier, Faith Tier. Let's talk about stats. For stats, we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 30 Endurance. We have 18 Strength, 60 Dexterity, and 33 Faith with the Faith Tier, so we can use Halashabiri, which is a generic damage boost for Thunderbolt. We're using Golden Vow as well. Okay, the next one on here actually turned out great, and that's because the Iron Greatsword has one of the highest base damages in Blood Affinity, which is awesome at over 300, so we decided to use it with Repeating Thrust. Blood Tax has a little bit of a damage reduction, so Repeating Thrust is better in Blood Affinity, and the damage ends up being incredible. Now, Moog is going to take additional damage because he is very weak to bleed, ironically, but the Repeating Thrust build as a whole with the Iron Greatsword you're going to see on screen is absolutely just insane how much damage we're able to get out of it because it has such good base damage and Blood Affinity along with Strength scaling. Again, that highlight video is going to be on the alternate channel. We'll probably do that sometime this week. I'm actually sick at the moment. I'm going to talk about that at the end of the video. Hopefully it doesn't last longer than a week, but yeah, I haven't really been feeling the best. I'm going to try to do that one for my alt soon where we talk about the Iron Greatsword because it truly is very good in so many different affinities. Let's jump into equipment. For equipment, we have the Iron Greatsword and Blood Affinity with Repeating Thrust. We have the Dragon Communion Seal, Scales with Arcane, White Mask, check out the armor set there, Melissen's Prosthesis, Shard of Alexander, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Rotwing Sword Insignia, Thorny Tier, Faith Tier. Let's talk about stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 28 Endurance. We have 40 Strength. If you two-hand it, you're going to have 60 Strength. We have 45 Arcane. This is the Strength and Arcane build. We are using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength to buff this. And yeah, you can try this with Blood Tax as well if you want to gain back some HP, but I tend to get less damage from Blood Tax in comparison to Repeating Thrust and Blood Affinity. And next up is the other one that appeared on my alternate channel, and that is the Spinning Grim Reaper. I had a lot of fun with this build. This revolves around Spinning Strikes, Blood Flame Blade, the Grave Scythe, and then we're going to be using Heavy Affinity as well. For this weapon specifically, the Grave Scythe, you're going to get more damage and better scaling out of Heavy Affinity, despite the fact that both Keen and Heavy both have a B. You'll get around 50 points higher in damage, and you can also two-hand it, which is a huge advantage for strength builds. Another mention, by the way, because I've gotten a couple of them lately, but anybody that drops a super, by the way, I do notice those. I'm going to do a shout out in future videos. Some of the videos, like the big list videos and stuff that go up on the weekend, I'll start doing shout outs for supers, and I appreciate those guys. It's been awesome. There was one recently, so I'll do a shout out for that at the end. Back to the build. As far as Spinning Strikes, you're going to get a ton of bleed build up and a good amount of damage with this build. It's also really fun to use because it's super fun to pull off. Spinning Strikes with the Grave Scythe, the Grim Reaper setup is a really cool build, fun build to run. Let's jump into equipment. And we have the Grave Scythe and Heavy Affinity with Blood Flame Blade. Any seal will do. We have the Knights Cavalry set and the Royal Remains mask on. Rotwing Sword Insignia, Ritual Shield Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Thorny Tier, Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats. And we are using the Spinning Strikes Ash of War, by the way. You do have to do a little bit of a side quest in Weeping Peninsula to get the weapon that you can take the Ash of War off of. And for this build, we have 60 Vigor, 25 Mind, 30 Endurance, 66 Strength. We're maxing our Strength when we're two-handing it, 25 Faith with the Faith Tier. We're using Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, Blood Flame Blade for our buffs. And I'll attach the Grave Scythe highlight video in the description below too. The next one up here is the one that we covered on Friday, and this is the Blood Pyro Knight build. This is a little bit different of a version that also adds in some damage for the Dragon Incantations as well. This is a really fun one. We're going to take on Malenia on New Game Plus 7. And the whole concept here, much like the first clip that you saw in the video, is to use the boost in the offhand, and then the main hand's going to be the Dragon Communion Seal. We're using Dragon Ice, Glintstone Breath, and then we're going to be using Burno Flame too. The next clip after this one's going to be a side boss where I show off the full potential of the build and you can mix everything. I was using Bloodblade with it if you saw my video on Friday. I did not use that for Malenia and ended up changing one talisman because she can dodge it. Yeah, her ability to dodge that makes it super frustrating. At least with the Dragon Incantations, she's going to mostly run into them. By the way, when she jumps up for Waterfowl, you can actually knock her out of it by proccing Frost with Dragon Ice. It's a good way to get her out of it, but keep in mind sometimes she'll immediately go into another Waterfowl dance. It's just the way her AI is designed, I guess, where if she gets knocked out of it or if she's unable to do it, eventually she's just going to start spamming it. So you have to be careful and be aware of that. As far as if you do too much damage in the first phase, actually the next move after the Rot Flower in the second phase, if Waterfowl skipped in the first phase, will almost always be Waterfowl Dance. You can rebuff at the end of the first phase. The first phase, you have so much time. You can back away. She's not really overly aggressive in this phase. And then when phase 2 starts, you're going to want to make sure you rebuff or do whatever you need to do. Make sure you fill up your FP and then go in for some big damage. This ends up being an epic battle. By the way, she has around a combined, I think, 50,000 HP on New Game Plus 7, so it's not too fun there. I think it's like 48,000 or something in total. That's a lot of HP to go through. Thankfully, Burno Flame will consistently knock her on the ground unless she's using one of her Hyper Armor move attacks. In that case, she will not fall down, but the majority of the time, she's just going to keep getting knocked down, and as she continues to get knocked down over and over again, and by the way, I ended up avoiding Waterfowl there. That was really close. I kind of forgot that happened and got distracted for a second. That was pretty intense. I'm not the best at dodging that. But yeah, keep knocking her down with Burno Flame, and she'll keep flying up in the air. It's kind of a funny way to fight her. She has 0 fire resistance too. Yeah, I've been writing a lot of scripts for my videos lately, but I didn't end up writing a script for this one. I like to improvise with some of the fun builds and stuff, and I totally forgot that happened and ended up surviving Waterfowl Dance coming out of Burno Flame. That was pretty crazy. Definitely one of those intense Malenia fights that you would expect. In a second here, we're going to go over equipment and the entire build and setup for this one. So for equipment, we have the Dragon Communion Seal, Scavenger Curve Sword. We're going to go over that in a little bit. Giant Seal for the offhand. You can check out the armor set there. We have the Roar Medallion, Godfrey Icon, Phlox Canvas Talisman, Fire Scorpion Charm, Fire Tier, Magic Tier. Let's jump into stats. For stats, we have 60 Vigor, 26 Mind and Endurance. We have 16 Strength and 14 Dexterity. We have 45 Faith with the Faith Tier, 45 Arcane. We're using Golden Vow, Howler Shabiri, Burno Flame, Dragon Ice, and Glintstone Breath. One of my favorite builds currently, if you want to check out that video too, that was my video from Friday, goes a little bit more in depth. We're going to show the bleed part of this build right now with the full build options. And for the full build options here, we're going to be adding in Bloodblade. For most bosses, this will work really well, and you can add Lord of Blood's Exaltation or the White Mask. That's not really my style. I don't think it goes with anything, but it does add damage. So I stuck with my regular armor here, but that would add 10% more damage. And you have the option to combine Dragon Incantations, of course, with Bleed. By the way, there is a full video. I mentioned it earlier once or twice at this point, but the full video uses the Blasphemous Blade as well. It's an incredible build, honestly, that has a ton of versatility and can actually run through most of the bosses on New Game Plus 7. It's pretty incredible. Definitely be sure to check that one out in the description. But yeah, combining Dragon Incantations with Bleed, this has been done many times because Faith and Arcane, that's the point after all. But yeah, overall throwing in Burno Flame and using the Giant Seal with the offhand boost is definitely something huge to add to it that you can get for big target damage and a lot of fire damage in general when you have a setup like this. For those that asked, by the way, for my DLC build, I'm probably going to run with a Faith build because you have the options of lightning damage, holy damage, and fire damage. A lot of variety there. Let's jump into equipment. For equipment, we have the Dragon Communion Seal plus 10. We have the Scavenger Curve Sword on Occult with Bloodblade. We're using the Giant Seal in the offhand, Roar Medallion, Godfrey Icon, Phlox Canvas Talisman, Lord of Blood's Exaltation. You can use the White Mask too. And then we have the Fire Tier and the Magic Tier as well. For people wondering, I believe we're on Journey 31 because it was 32 I think I was going into on the last video. The journey is actually in the video that's in the description. This was the one before that because I recorded this first. Thanks for watching. Be sure to sub. Don't forget to sub, by the way, if you really enjoy my content so far. There's going to be plenty more builds to come. I ended up picking up a bug. I'm sick currently, so I'm probably going to rest. I don't know, eat some soup and stuff for a little bit. And shout out to Marital Joke, by the way. Thanks for watching, everybody.